My son was about to marry his college sweetheart and become a multi-millionaire overnight. Everyone at the engagement party called them the perfect power couple. But when his fiancée slipped a note into my purse that read, "Missus Wilson, they're stealing everything from James," my blood ran cold. Welcome to Twisted RCT Stories. I'm sharing real-life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe and like my video. Now, let's get back to my story. I'm sure you'll love it if you keep listening until the end. I stood near the yacht's railing, champagne flute in hand, watching my son James laugh with a group of investors. At 30 years old, he'd just sold his artificial intelligence startup for $80 million. The sale would close in 2 weeks, right after his wedding to Sophie Chen, his fiancée of 3 years. The yacht swayed gently in San Francisco Bay as the sun set behind the Golden Gate Bridge, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was the kind of evening that belonged in a magazine spread about successful young tech entrepreneurs. String lights twinkled above the deck, where 100 guests mingled, most of them venture capitalists, tech executives, and James's business associates. Sophie looked radiant in a white cocktail dress, her dark hair swept up in an elegant chignon. She moved through the crowd with practiced grace, the perfect corporate wife-to-be. James kept his arm around her waist, beaming with pride every time someone congratulated them. Daniel Pierce, James's business partner and the company's CFO, clinked a knife against his glass. The crowd quieted. He stood on the small stage near the yacht's bow, microphone in hand, looking every inch the polished executive in his tailored navy suit. "I'd like to propose a toast," Daniel said, his voice smooth and confident. "To James and Sophie. James, you've been more than a business partner to me. You've been a brother. And now, you're about to marry the most amazing woman. Here's to your future together, and to the next chapter of your success." Everyone applauded. I clapped too, but something felt off. Maybe it was a mother's intuition, or maybe it was the way Daniel's wife Victoria smirked behind her champagne glass, but unease settled in my stomach like a stone. I'd never particularly liked Daniel. He joined James's company 5 years ago when they needed someone to handle the financial side. James was the creative genius, the one who developed the AI algorithm that made them millions. Daniel was the numbers guy, the one who schmoozed with investors and negotiated deals. Over the years, I'd watched Daniel's influence grow. He'd moved from CFO to equal partner, though James had done all the original work. When I'd mentioned my concerns to James 6 months ago, he'd brushed them off. "Mom, I couldn't have built this company without Daniel. He's been crucial to our success. You just don't understand business." Those words had stung, but I'd backed off. What did I know? I was a retired high school principal, not a tech entrepreneur. Sophie approached me near the railing, her smile bright but her eyes darting nervously around the deck. "Mrs. Wilson, could you help me with something in the cabin? My necklace clasp is stuck." "Of course, dear." I followed her down the narrow stairs into one of the yacht's luxurious guest cabins. The moment the door closed, Sophie's smile vanished. Her hands trembled as she reached into her clutch and pulled out a folded document. "I wasn't sure whether to show you this," she whispered, glancing at the door. "But you're the only person I can trust. James won't listen to me." She handed me the papers. I unfolded them, squinting at the legal text in the dim cabin lighting. It was a prenuptial agreement, which wasn't surprising given James's newfound wealth. But as I read through it, my confusion grew. The prenup didn't just protect James's assets in case of divorce. It contained clauses about the business sale, about stock allocations, about voting rights, and buried in the dense legal language was a section that made my heart stop. Upon marriage, James Wilson agrees to transfer operational control of his shares in Wilson Pierce Technologies to Daniel Pierce for a period of 7 years, with Pierce maintaining executive decision-making authority over all business matters derived from said sale. "What is this?" I looked up at Sophie, my hands shaking. Daniel drew it up. He told James it was standard protection, that all tech entrepreneurs do this when they get married. He said it would protect James's business interests from being compromised by marriage. Sophie's voice cracked. "But I showed it to my cousin Lisa. She's a corporate lawyer in New York. She said this basically gives Daniel complete control over James's shares and all the money from the sale." James signed this? Not yet. The wedding's in 10 days. Daniel wants him to sign everything the morning of the ceremony, right before we go to the venue. Sophie grabbed my arm. Mrs. Wilson, I've tried talking to James about it. He gets angry, says I'm being paranoid, that Daniel would never betray him. He says I'm just jealous because Daniel's been his partner longer than I've been his fiancé. I sank onto the cabin's leather sofa, my mind racing. Why would Daniel do this? I did some digging. Sophie pulled out her phone, scrolling through screenshots. Daniel's been having financial problems. His wife Victoria comes from old money, and she's been pressuring him to maintain a certain lifestyle. 6 months ago, he took out a massive loan using his stake in the company as collateral. If the sale doesn't go through, or if James backs out, Daniel loses everything. But the sale is happening. Why does he need control? Because James has been talking about using his money to start a nonprofit AI ethics foundation. He wants to use half his earnings for that, instead of the investment opportunities Daniel has lined up. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. Daniel's been positioning himself as the primary controller of the funds. With this prenup in place, he can override James's decisions. He can invest the money however he wants, and just give James a small percentage. This couldn't be happening. My brilliant, trusting son was about to sign away his entire future. We need to tell him, I said, standing up. I tried. He accused me of trying to sabotage his oldest friendship. He said if I didn't trust Daniel, maybe I didn't trust him either. Sophie wiped her eyes. Daniel's been in his ear constantly, saying I'm trying to come between them, that I'm only interested in the money. That's manipulation. I know. But James won't see it. He idolizes Daniel. Always has. Sophie grabbed my hands. You're his mother. He might listen to you. Before I could respond, the cabin door opened. Victoria Pierce stood in the doorway, her designer dress glittering under the lights, a cold smile on her perfectly made-up face. Well, isn't this cozy? She drawled. The bride and the mother-in-law having secret meetings. Daniel wondered where you two had disappeared to. We were just fixing Sophie's necklace, I said quickly. Victoria's eyes dropped to the prenup papers in my lap. Her smile widened. I see. Well, no use hiding it now, is there? Sophie, darling, did you really think you could convince James that Daniel's trying to cheat him? How pathetic. Sophie stepped forward, her voice steady despite her pale face. This prenup is fraud. It's designed to steal James's money. It's designed to protect an idiot from his own naive impulses, Victoria snapped. Your precious James wants to throw away $40 million on some charity pipe dream. Daniel's been carrying that company for years while James played around with his code. He deserves to make sure the money gets invested properly. By properly, you mean into your family's failing real estate portfolio, Sophie shot back. Victoria's expression turned ugly. You have no proof of that. Actually, I do. Sophie held up her phone. I have emails between Daniel and your father discussing the Wilson windfall and how they plan to use it to bail out Pierce Holdings. I watched Victoria's face drain of color. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Victoria lunged for Sophie's phone. I stepped between them, and Victoria's perfectly manicured nails scraped across my arm. That's assault, I said calmly, though my heart pounded. In front of witnesses. Victoria stepped back, breathing hard. You think you're so smart. But it doesn't matter what you know. James will never believe you over Daniel. Never. They're signing those papers in 10 days, and there's nothing you can do about it. She turned and strode out of the cabin, slamming the door behind her. Sophie and I stared at each other. My arm stung where Victoria had scratched me, and I could see the beginning of red marks. We need help, I said. Professional help. Do you know any lawyers? My cousin Lisa. I already sent her the prenup. She's reviewing it now. Good. We need more than that, though. We need someone who understands business, someone James respects. I thought for a moment. Robert Chen. He mentored James in college, helped him get his first investors. James respects him. Professor Chen? Yes, he still consults for tech startups. Sophie's face brightened. If we could get him to look at this. Call your cousin. Get her analysis in writing. I'll reach out to Robert. I folded the prenup and slipped it into my purse. And Sophie? Thank you for trusting me with this. You're the only one who loves James as much as I do, she said softly. We can't let them destroy him. We emerged from the cabin separately. I went straight to the yacht's stern, pulling out my phone. Robert Chen answered on the third ring. "Margaret, how are you?" "Robert, I need your help. It's about James." I explained the situation quickly. Robert listened without interrupting, and I could almost hear his mind working through the problem. "That's not a prenup," he said finally. "That's a hostile takeover disguised as marriage protection. Margaret, if James signs that, he'll lose control of everything he's built. Can you talk to him? I'm in Seattle right now, but I can fly down tomorrow. Don't let him sign anything before I get there. The wedding's in 10 days. Then we have 10 days to save your son from making the biggest mistake of his life." I hung up and turned to find James standing behind me, his face dark with anger. "Mom, Victoria said you and Sophie were going through my private documents. What's going on?" My mind raced. I couldn't lie to my son, but I also couldn't tell him everything here, now, with Daniel watching from across the deck. "James, we need to talk. Privately. Not here." "Why?" "So you can tell me more stories about how Daniel's betraying me?" "Sophie already tried that. Sophie's trying to protect you." "Sophie's being paranoid. Daniel's been my partner for 5 years. He's never done anything except help me succeed." James's voice rose, and several guests turned to look. "I thought you'd be happy for me, Mom. I thought you'd trust my judgment." "I do trust your judgment. But, no, you don't. You never liked Daniel. You always thought I was too trusting, too naive." "Well, I built an $80 million company, Mom. I think I can handle my own business affairs." He walked away before I could respond, heading straight to Daniel, who put an arm around his shoulders and shot me a triumphant look. Sophie appeared at my side, tears streaming down her face. "He won't listen. He's so convinced that Daniel's his friend. Then we make him listen." I squared my shoulders. "We have 10 days. Let's use them." The next morning, I met with Sophie and her cousin Lisa at a coffee shop in downtown San Francisco. Lisa was a sharp woman in her early 30s, dressed in a power suit and carrying a briefcase full of legal documents. "This prenup is one of the most predatory documents I've ever seen," Lisa said, spreading papers across the table. "It's designed to look like standard asset protection, but these clauses here and here essentially make Daniel the beneficiary of James's entire fortune. He'll control the investments, collect the management fees, and James will be lucky to see 10% of his own money." "Is it legal?" I asked. "Technically, yes, if both parties sign willingly. But it's deeply unethical, and if we can prove coercion or fraud, we might be able to challenge it." Lisa tapped her pen against the papers. "The problem is proving Daniel's intent." "I have the emails," Sophie said, pulling up her phone. "Between Daniel and Victoria's father about using James's money for their family business." Lisa's eyes widened as she read through them. "These are gold. Where did you get them?" "Daniel left his laptop open at our apartment one night. James was in the shower, and I saw an email notification from Mr. Pierce mentioning securing the Wilson funds. I forwarded them to myself. That might not be admissible in court, but it gives us ammunition." Lisa made notes. "The real question is, how do we get James to see the truth before the wedding?" "Robert Chen is flying in today," I said. "James respects him. If Robert explains the business implications, Daniel will spin it as jealousy or competition," Lisa interrupted. "We need hard proof that even James can't deny." "What about a forensic accountant?" Sophie suggested. "Someone who could look at Daniel's finances, show that he's desperate for money? That would take weeks, and we have 10 days. I drummed my fingers on the table. "We need something immediate, something dramatic." Lisa and Sophie exchanged glances. "What if we stage an intervention?" Lisa said slowly. "Gather everyone who cares about James, present all the evidence at once, make it impossible for him to ignore." "Where?" "Daniel monitors everything James does." "The rehearsal dinner," Sophie said suddenly. "It's in 8 days, at the Fairmont. James's whole family will be there, plus his college friends, his investors. Daniel can't control that crowd. He'll try to stop us from speaking." "Not if we have the microphone first." Sophie's expression turned determined. "I'm the bride. I'm supposed to make a speech thanking everyone. What if I use that moment to expose everything? They'll say you're having cold feet, that you're backing out of the wedding," Lisa warned. "Let them. Better that than watching James destroy his life. Sophie grabbed my hand. "Mrs. Wilson, will you stand with me?" I thought of my son, brilliant and trusting, about to be betrayed by the man he considered his best friend. I thought of all the years I'd spent teaching students to think critically, to question authority, to stand up for what's right. Absolutely. The next 8 days passed in a blur of preparation. Robert Chen met with me and Sophie, reviewing the prenup and the emails. His face grew grimmer with each page. "This is worse than I thought," he said. "Daniel's not just stealing James's money. He's positioning himself to push James out of any future ventures entirely. With this level of control, he could bar James from starting any competing businesses, could force him to invest in schemes that benefit Daniel's family, could essentially make James his employee. We need to make James understand that," I said. "I've tried calling him. Daniel's always there, always has an excuse for why James can't talk." Robert rubbed his face. "I think we need to go with Sophie's plan. A public intervention might be our only shot." Over the next week, I quietly contacted James's closest friends from college, his favorite professor, and 2 of his early investors who'd since become mentors. I explained the situation carefully, showed them the evidence, and asked them to attend the rehearsal dinner, prepared to speak if needed. Most agreed immediately. A few were skeptical until they saw the prenup. "This is theft," one investor said, his face red with anger. Daniel Pierce represented himself as a partner, but this document proves he's been planning this takeover for months, maybe years. "Will you come to the dinner?" I asked. "I'll be there. And I'll make damn sure James understands what he's signing away." James and I barely spoke during that week. He was busy with wedding preparations and final business meetings. The few times I tried to bring up the prenup, he shut me down immediately. "Mom, I'm not discussing this. Daniel's my partner, Sophie's being paranoid, and I'm done with everyone questioning my judgment." But I noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Some part of him suspected something was wrong. He just couldn't admit it. The night before the rehearsal dinner, Sophie called me, her voice shaking. "Daniel moved up the signing. He wants James to sign the prenup tomorrow morning, before the dinner. He says they need it done for the lawyer before the wedding. Can you stall him?" I tried. "James says he's signing it. He's tired of everyone making a fuss." Sophie sobbed. "Mrs. Wilson, what do we do?" "We move up our intervention. Tomorrow morning, before he can sign, can you get James to the Fairmont early? Tell him you need to do a walkthrough for the dinner?" "I'll try." "And Sophie, bring the prenup. We're ending this tomorrow, one way or another." The next morning, I arrived at the Fairmont Hotel at 9 a.m. Robert Chen, Lisa, and Sophie were already there, along with James's college friends Mark and David, his former professor Dr. Williams, and investors Sarah and Thomas. Sophie had managed to convince James to come early by saying she needed his help with seating arrangements. He arrived at 9:30, looking annoyed and exhausted. "Sophie, this better be important. I'm supposed to meet Daniel at 10 to sign." He stopped seeing the group assembled in the private dining room. "What's going on?" "James, please sit down," I said. "We need to talk to you." "Is this an intervention? Seriously?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Mom, this is ridiculous." "James, just hear them out," Sophie pleaded. He looked at her, and something in her expression made him hesitate. Slowly, he sat down in one of the chairs. "Fine. You have 5 minutes." Robert Chen stood up. "James, I mentored you through your first startup. I watched you build this company from nothing. And I'm telling you now, as someone who cares about your future, that prenup Daniel wants you to sign is designed to steal everything you've worked for." James's face flushed. "Not you too, Professor Chen. I expected better. Look at this." Robert slid the prenup across the table, pointing to specific clauses. "This section here gives Daniel complete control over your shares. This one allows him to make investment decisions without your approval. This one prevents you from starting any competing business for 7 years. Those are standard protection clauses." "No, they're not," Lisa interrupted, standing up. "I'm a corporate lawyer, Mr. Wilson. I've reviewed hundreds of prenups. These clauses aren't designed to protect your marriage. They're designed to give Daniel Pierce control of your entire fortune. This is insane. Daniel wouldn't. Read these emails. Sophie pulled out her phone, her hand shaking as she passed it to James. Between Daniel and Victoria's father, they're planning to use your money to bail out their family's real estate company. James read the emails, his expression shifting from anger to confusion to horror. His hands trembled. Where did you get these? From Daniel's laptop. I know I shouldn't have looked, but I saw a notification and Sophie's voice broke. James, I love you. I would never try to come between you and your friend if I didn't believe he was trying to hurt you. Mark, James's college roommate, stood up. Dude, I've been watching Daniel for years. He's always been jealous of you, always tried to take credit for your ideas. Remember when you presented the AI algorithm to investors and he told them it was our collaborative work? Remember when he pushed you to drop out of the ethics seminar because it would waste time? He was right about the seminar, James said weakly. We needed to focus on the company. No, he needed you to focus on making money so he could control it, David added, standing up. James, wake up. Daniel's not your friend. He's been using you. James looked around the room at all these people who loved him, who'd flown in or rearranged their schedules to be here. Then he looked at the prenup, at the emails, at the concerned faces. I need to think, he said finally. I can't. The dining room door burst open. Daniel Pierce strode in, Victoria right behind him, both looking furious. I knew you were planning something, Daniel said, glaring at Sophie. James, come on. We have papers to sign. Daniel, I need to talk to you about this prenup, James said slowly. We've talked about it. It's standard protection. These people are just trying to manipulate you. Daniel grabbed James's arm. Come on, we're leaving. Get your hand off my son, I said, standing up. Daniel sneered at me. Stay out of this, Margaret. This is business. You wouldn't understand. I understand betrayal when I see it. Betrayal? Daniel laughed. I've been carrying James for 5 years. I've made the deals, handled the investors, done all the actual work while he played with his computer. This company succeeded because of me, and I deserve to be compensated for that. You were already compensated, Robert Chen said coldly. You got millions from the sale. Not enough. Not nearly enough for what I've put up with. Daniel's mask of friendship finally dropped completely. You want to know the truth, James? You're brilliant at coding, but you're useless at everything else. Without me, you'd still be working in some basement on a project no one would ever fund. I made you successful. I earned that money. James stood up slowly, his face pale. You said we were partners. We were. And you were the useful one until you started talking about throwing away half our money on charity. Daniel's voice dripped with contempt. $40 million on an ethics foundation? Are you kidding me? That money could be invested, multiplied, used properly. Instead, you want to waste it because you have some naive idea about making the world better. So, you decided to steal it. I decided to make sure it didn't get wasted on your stupid idealism. Daniel grabbed the prenup from the table. Sign this, and we can all move on. Don't sign it, and I'll make sure every investor in Silicon Valley knows you're unreliable, naive, and too ethical to work with. Your reputation will be destroyed. The room fell silent. James looked at Daniel. Really looked at him, perhaps for the first time seeing him clearly. You're threatening me, James said quietly. I'm protecting my interests by stealing mine. By preventing you from throwing away everything we built. Daniel's voice rose. James, be reasonable. Sign the prenup, marry Sophie, and let me handle the investments. You'll still be rich. You'll still have a successful company on your resume. You just won't have control over money you don't know how to manage. And if I refuse? Daniel smiled coldly. Then I'll make sure you regret it. I have dirt on every decision you've made, every corner you've cut, every NDA you've skirted. I can make you look like a fraud. Who do you think the investors will believe? Me, the CFO who handled all the numbers? Or you, the naive coder who lucked into one good algorithm? I'd never seen such naked hatred on someone's face. This was who Daniel really was, who he'd always been behind the friendly facade. James stood very still. Then, slowly, he picked up the prenup. For one terrible moment, I thought he might sign it anyway, might choose the easy path of giving in. Instead, he tore it in half. We're done, James said. The partnership, the friendship, all of it. Done. Daniel's face turned purple. You're making a huge mistake. The mistake was trusting you. James's voice shook, but he stood firm. Get out. You're not welcome at my wedding. You can't kick me out. Half those guests are my contacts. Then you'd better leave before I have security escort you out. Victoria grabbed Daniel's arm. Come on, they're not worth it. We'll find another Mark. She actually said that, out loud, in front of witnesses. The admission of their plan couldn't have been clearer. Daniel and Victoria left, slamming the door behind them. In the silence that followed, James sank back into his chair, his head in his hands. I'm so stupid, he whispered. How did I not see it? I moved to his side, putting my hand on his shoulder. You trusted your friend. That's not stupid. That's human. He was planning this for months. Maybe years. And James looked up at Sophie, tears in his eyes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't believe you. Sophie knelt beside him, taking his hands. You believe me now. That's what matters. I almost lost you. I almost lost everything. But you didn't. She kissed his forehead. You woke up in time. Robert Chen cleared his throat. James, we need to talk about protecting yourself legally. If Daniel tries to follow through on his threats, he won't, Lisa said confidently. Not after what he just admitted in front of 8 witnesses. If he tries anything, we have evidence of attempted fraud and coercion. I'll make sure of it. James nodded, still looking shell-shocked. Thank you, all of you. I don't know what I did to deserve this kind of support. You're a good man, Mark said. And good men deserve to be protected from vultures. The rehearsal dinner that evening was smaller than planned, missing Daniel and Victoria and several of their social circle. But it was warmer, more genuine. James stood up to make a speech, and his voice only shook a little. I want to thank my mother, he said, looking at me, for seeing the truth when I couldn't, for loving me enough to risk making me angry, for teaching me that real friendship isn't about blind loyalty, it's about honest care. I wiped tears from my eyes as he continued, and I want to thank Sophie for being braver than I was, for standing up even when I pushed her away. I promise you, from this day forward, I'll listen when you're worried. I'll trust your instincts. I'll be the partner you deserve. Sophie was crying too. Happy tears this time. The last few weeks taught me something important, James said. Money doesn't matter if you're surrounded by people who only want to use you. Success means nothing if you achieve it by betraying your values. I'm still going to fund that ethics foundation, maybe now more than ever. Because if my experience can teach even one person to be more careful about who they trust, it will have been worth it. The room erupted in applause. The wedding 8 days later was beautiful. Simple, elegant, focused on love rather than show. James walked down the aisle with tears in his eyes, and Sophie glowed with happiness. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, there was a moment of tension, everyone afraid Daniel might appear. But the moment passed peacefully, and they were married without incident. At the reception, during the bouquet toss, Sophie turned and walked directly to me, handing me the flowers instead of throwing them. This is for you, Mrs. Wilson, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Because you saved us. You saved our future, our happiness, and my husband's soul. Thank you. I hugged her, hugged my son, and looked around at all the people who truly cared about them. This was what real wealth looked like. Not millions in a bank account, but genuine love and loyal support. 6 months later, James's AI Ethics Foundation opened its doors. He'd invested $40 million into research on responsible artificial intelligence development. The foundation made headlines, won awards, and attracted some of the brightest minds in the field. Daniel Pierce tried to sue for breach of partnership, but Lisa destroyed his case in court. The emails, combined with witness testimony from the rehearsal dinner, proved his intent to defraud. The suit was dismissed, and Daniel was forced to pay legal fees. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he and Victoria divorced shortly after, when her family discovered he'd been lying about his finances. Last I heard, he was working for a mid-level consulting firm, his reputation in tatters. As for James and Sophie, they're thriving. She's running the foundation's marketing department. He's developing new algorithms focused on ethical AI applications. They bought a modest house in Palo Alto, nothing like the mansion Daniel had been pushing them toward. Last week, they invited me to dinner to share some news. Sophie's pregnant. They're having a girl, and they want to name her Margaret. After the bravest woman we know, James said, taking my hand. The woman who taught me that real strength is standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. I thought back to that moment on the yacht, when Sophie slipped that note into my purse. How my world had tilted, how everything I'd thought I knew about my son's life had shifted. But from that crisis had come clarity, from that pain had come purpose, and from that near disaster had come the happiest ending I could have imagined. Sometimes the hardest thing a mother can do is tell her child a truth they don't want to hear. Sometimes love means risking anger, rejection, even permanent damage to the relationship. But I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because that's what real love is. Not protecting someone from discomfort, but protecting them from real harm, no matter the cost. My son is happy. His wife is safe. Their future is secure. And that, in the end, is all any mother could ask for. I'm so happy you're here and that I got to share my story with you. If you enjoyed it, please show your support by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments what city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm very curious to know where all you wonderful people are watching from. If you'd like to support me a little more, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories with you every day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will appear on the screen for you to choose what to watch.